So the INS project, the Invasive Non-Native Species project, is really important for restoring some ground in some areas. So when you've got Japanese knotweed, it takes over the land and creates a monoculture. And we're looking at, we erase that, we control it and reduce the amount of Japanese knotweed and look to come back the next year to restore that ground so that another invasive species such as Himalayan balsam doesn't just come in and take over it all again. So we look at what we can plant that was originally there, looking at species that are native to the area so that we are getting rid of the invasive species and bringing back the native species to restore the land and improve the river habitats, which is mainly where they spread. So to create the original landscape that might once have been there, we need to first of all look at controlling the Japanese knotweed. So you can't just do that in 1 year, so we tend to have a bit of a 5-year plan. So the first 3 years, starting to get rid of the Japanese knotweed to really control it. The first year you can get rid of quite a lot, and then it's about 20% after that you can get rid of each time. And then beyond that, it's really just controlling it, making sure it doesn't come back or that another invasive species doesn't come in. So instead looking at what was there, planting up some native woodland and just really educating local landowners so that they know what to look out for if the invasive species come back. And that way you're going to get what was originally around and create a more wild landscape. Because unfortunately, if you just let it go, as a lot of people feel you would with rewilding, you're just going to get Japanese knotweed taking over. And so sometimes it's not about letting the land go, but it's about encouraging what was originally there to come back. The 3 main invasive species that we sort of deal with are Himalayan balsam, Japanese knotweed and giant hogweed. So Himalayan balsam has a very shallow root structure, and when it creates this monoculture, so it takes over and doesn't allow any other plants to grow, the shallow root structure means that the banks are really, they're not very stable. The banks aren't very stable, and so when they die off over winter, if there's a flood, it can just take away the bankside and remove all of the vegetation that was there. Japanese knotweed can completely take over, and it has a very strong root structure, but this then means that it can grow through anything. You can see it growing through the concrete in car parks, through any sort of gaps, even had people have it growing into their kitchens. So it can completely take over, and it's incredibly damaging, and it's a very determined plant. So we really need to try and get rid of that. Giant hogweed is actually very toxic to humans. It can burn your skin and leave you with blisters, and it's a massive health hazard. These are the 3 main invasive species that we deal with, and all 3 of them are completely designed in this environment to take over. So Himalayan balsam has little seed pods that produce hundreds of seeds over the plant, and it just spreads instantly. So one plant can produce hundreds of other plants. And Japanese knotweed, it expands from its rhizomes and can just, from the tiniest nodule that breaks off, produce a whole other plant. Giant hogweed similarly has lots of seeds that will spread all over. So it's really about eliminating these before they seed and before they take over and kill off all the native plants. So with invasive species, in particular Japanese knotweed, it's really important to continue to manage the land because the smallest rhizome can create a whole new plant. Therefore, you have to keep going back and checking on that area that you've previously treated to ensure that the management has worked and that in the future it's not going to come back. Ways of managing this are planting new areas or completely clearing out the soil.